Hello. Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and dear friends in the gas market. Greeting from Oslo, and welcome to Greenfact Webinar on Renewable Gas. My name is Wei, the Managing Director of Greenfact. For those who don't know us yet, Greenfact is a market intelligence company specialized in green certificates pricing and insights. In the next hour, together with my colleagues, Kevin and Tui, and two guest speakers, we will try to give the audience an update of the progress on the EU standardized system of green gas and also take the opportunity to clarify some of the questions regarding book and claim and mass balancing approaches and their benefits in the green gas value chain. It's our great honor to have two speakers from the leading associations who are having this discussion now join us today. Katrien Verwimp from AIB, Association of Issuing Bodies, and Stefanie Köningsberger from ERGaR, European Renewable Gas Registry. I would also like to thank over 250 participants in the gas markets across whole Europe who join us online now. We look forward to have interesting discussions with you. Now, a few things before we start. First, this webinar will be recorded. A recorded version plus the presentations will be shared with all participants after the event. Secondly, we'd love to hear from you during the webinar. There will be a Q&A session after all presentations are done. Okay? And then now I would like to welcome our first speaker, Katrien Verwimp. She coordinates the sector integration program in the AIB and also currently represents AIB in the ERGaR Trace and the Certified projects. Katrien? Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to share my screen. Just a second. It should be working. It would be nice if you could confirm seeing the presentation.
We can see it, but it's not presentation mode. It's the
Thank
whole
you.
PowerPoint.
So now
Yes.
it should be in presentation mode.
Perfect.
Thank you, Stefanie. So I thank you very much for the honor of presenting here today together with Stefanie from ERGaR. I'm Katrien Verwimp. I am the coordinator of AIB's sector integration program and talking about today about how the European energy certificate system certifies the origin of gases. So this is more or less what I will be talking about. I consider it as a word cloud. Who is AIB? We are the Association of Issuing Bodies, and the mission statement of AIB is since many years guaranteeing the origin of European energy. We are a not-for-profit Brussels-based association founded in 2002. We developed the EECS standards, the European Energy Certificate System, and have currently 31 members from 28 countries. Belgium has 4 issuing bodies, so that's why it's more members than countries. But apart from that, all other countries have 1 issuing body as a member to the association. All of our current members are competent bodies for guarantees of origin that are assigned in the legislative system for the guarantees of origin in that country, in that domain. Although in the past we had issuing bodies of voluntary certificate systems also, and also today we have an observer of a voluntary that aims to set up a certificate system as a voluntary scheme as well. So about half AIB's members are also competent bodies for electricity disclosure supervision. Some are heavily engaged in the process of that, and others of our members are not. 7 of our members are assigned by their governments for issuing gas guarantees of origin today already, while others are likely to be assigned soon, and others are already clear that it will not be their role to be the issuing body for gas geo issuing in their country. Many our issuing bodies have different roles in the energy market. We have transmission system operators, regulators, market operators, governmental agencies. So we have a variety of kind of roles. In 2020, 600 million guarantees of origin were transferred over the AIB hub. Our members together issued about 900 million guarantees of origin for electricity. For gas, more will come soon. So you asked me to explain a little bit about a book and claim system, energy tracking in a book and claim system. How does it look? So if you produce energy, in this case, let's produce hydrogen, just taking one energy carrier here. This can be traded over the physical market for that energy carrier and being sold at a customer of hydrogen. The hydrogen market trades the green or gray hydrogen, the physical hydrogen without any attributes. And the geosystem documents the attributes of this hydrogen. At the time of production, a guarantee of origin can be issued for the hydrogen that is being disposed. And the guarantee of origin can be traded over the market for guarantees of origin, which can be a separate market than the physical hydrogen market, or it can be the same depending on what the market participants like to do with it. And the hydrogen geo can be cancelled to document the claim of green hydrogen consumption. This system enables consumer choice. It promotes market efficiency and simplicity. It protects liquidity and supports the internal market. This follows from Article 19 of the Renewable Energy Directive, a one-pager that provides the basics for a geosystem, and which also says that member states must ensure that guarantees of origin are in line with the EN 16325 standard for guarantees of origin, which is currently under revision to extend it from electricity to other energy carriers and some other updates to it. Why does that standard work on a generic geosystem for all energy carriers? Looking here at the gas grid, where natural gas is inserted together with biomethane. Currently, biomethane volumes are rather low still, but they are being injected. A gas consumer can buy the renewable gas through a guarantee of origin for this gas. And the categorization of gases in CEN is still ongoing, so make a little bit abstraction of that, but it is a hydrocarbon gas, let's call it for now. And that's how he can claim to consume renewable gas from renewable energy sources. This consumer can also be a consumer who uses the gas to convert it into another energy carrier, in this case, hydrogen, for example. That hydrogen can be transported to a hydrogen consumer, and that hydrogen consumer can be informed of the renewable origin if a hydrogen geo would be used and cancelled for it, but that requires such a geo to be issued. And that's the concept of geo conversion issuance, which requires the gas geo to be cancelled in correspondence to the amount of gas input to this hydrogen production plant, and an amount of hydrogen geos to be issued in accordance with the output of that plant. The same can take place for electricity. You can document renewable electricity production to produce renewable hydrogen and cancel renewable electricity geos for an amount of hydrogen that you issue renewable hydrogen geos for. And then this would be called hydrogen from wind to this consumer. The framework for cross-border transfer or for cross-border harmonization of guarantees of origin is given by RED 2. The one pager I mentioned, Article 19, the EN 16325 provides more information rather on the purpose of providing a reliable geosystem so that cross-border transferred geos are reliable and trustworthy. Just to be fully efficient in operation, you need to harmonize a lot of detail, but that detail may need updates on a frequent basis, and a renewable energy directive nor a standard can frequently be updated. So the European Energy Certificate System has proven to work well as a voluntary standard that in co-creation by the issuing bodies updates the rules the participants have agreed upon. EEGS, however, also covers other products and guarantees of origin. More about that in a second. So what is EEGS? How does it look? It's a book with the EEGS rules. They contain rules for certificate administration, participation in the system, and scheme-specific rules. EEGS also has more detail in subsidiary documents on a lot of elements, like data protocol, etc. Also, dynamic information is recorded in fact sheets, and domain protocols describe the specific regulations in a specific country or region. The parts that are mirrored in the EN 16325 standard, they are basically the high-level rules from the EEGS rules and the scheme-specific rules. So already the 2013 standard was based on the EEGS rules, but that was for electricity alone. Now the update is also based on the EEGS rules, but of course includes also heating and cooling, which are not yet included in EEGS. What does an EEGS certificate look like? It's a unique certification number with a lot of data fields issued per megawatt hour. Then these data fields, they document about the energy produced and the production device. So the energy carrier is recorded, the type of product, it's a guarantee of origin, but it can be also a support certificate or non-governmental certificate, mainly currently for electricity our guarantee of origin being issued. Then a lot of information on production dates, production devices. And we have also information on the energy carrier specific. So for gas certificates, we have some data fields that are dedicated to gas origin. We have some mandatory data fields and some optional data fields. The data fields itself, they are under further discussion for further fine-tuning, which reflects the pioneering stage that we are still in. Also relevant to consider is the data field purpose. The certificates are currently issued for electricity are mainly guarantees of origin. They have the purpose of disclosure, but the structure of the certificate also allows to issue certificates for support and for target. Currently, this is only used in national systems, not at the international level, but it enables further development on these areas. One of our main assets is also the way international transfer of these electronic documents are being facilitated. As long as you deal with one domain only, you can transfer the guarantees of origin in the registry of that domain according to the rules of that domain. Once you go internationally or cross-domain, you need a lot of bilateral agreements with all the domains to which you enable the transfer of these electronic documents. That is feasible as long as there are few domains and low volume. But once you get high volume of amount of geos or a lot of domains to transfer on, it benefits from an automated system that in a standardized way facilitates the transfer. And in EEGS, this is a jointly owned and jointly operated system, the AIB hub, that facilitates efficiency and trust to the members with the aim to prevent fraud. Over the past years, AIB has been reorganizing itself to facilitate multiple energy carriers. We have, so in this graph, you see the new organizational structure. The general meeting has delegated, of all our members, has delegated decisions to the various organs of the association, each having a block. So any rules on content, they are being decided in the EEGS unit. In EEGS, there are included energy carrier conversion rules since 2019. And the gas scheme was also added in the EEGS rules as a chapter O of the EEGS rules ends 2019, after about a decade of it being in draft stage, but the RED 2 has speeded up its formal addition to the EEGS rules. The changes on the Article of Association early last year reflected also the new organizational structure, and the gas scheme group is a separate organ in AIB now. So AIB members are scheme all become at some point of time scheme members. Current members are all electricity scheme members or applicants, and several, or quite a lot of them, or about 12 of them, are observers to the gas scheme group, and that implies that they have a scheme co-developer status. The gas scheme group is a forum for discussion and resolution of challenges, where we are further fine-tuning it, and we expect several of our members to join the system soon. There are a lot of developments by issuing bodies under discussion. Several of these topics are both under discussion in AIB and in CEN. These discussions are fueling each other, of course, but maybe the details we can discuss them if relevant, or at another forum. These are also fueled by the external projects that we participate in as consortium partner. We participate in the ERGaR projects, where we very much appreciate the cooperation, for example, with ERGaR and the other issuing bodies and the European Biogas Association. And we participate in Certify as a consortium partner as well. In ERGaR, AIB mainly works on the task on leads the work package on the integration of geos for various energy carriers, and our main task there is to develop 2 reports on the coordination between electricity and renewable gas, and hydrogen certification systems. We recently had a workshop with issuing bodies and registry operators on handling geos in relation with energy carrier conversion and the challenges to be overcome. We are awaiting answers to a questionnaire on that field, and will feed the results into a harmonized set of rules for the conversion of geos of various energy carriers, and a design study on the technical requirements of a coordinated conversion process. We cooperate here with the European Biogas Association, with ERGaR, with AGCS and DENA. In Certify, we participate as a consortium partner in the 3rd project of Certify. There have been 2 earlier projects. Certify 3 is a service contract to the fuel cell and hydrogen joint undertaking. And it aims to develop or to exploit at EU-wide level the developments that were earlier agreed in the stakeholder forum of Certify, and to further fine-tune and develop it. That's why Certify actively participates in AIB's gas scheme group and aims to set up a voluntary issuing body for a voluntary scheme there. They also aim to expand the stakeholder forum with a work group on issuing bodies. And also relevant in the architectural design elements is that they aim to expand for hydrogen, the hydrogen geo, to a renewable fuel for non-biological origin certification, and have already a high-level architecture for that, linking a geo with other documentation. So, acknowledging this European framework that requires documentation of renewable energy, of energy origin, not only for guarantees of origin as in their current scope, being disclosure. We acknowledge that the EEGS structure in itself facilitates a lot these further developments, but they need to be further rolled out. So the data field structure in EEGS that allows for different purposes. You can have, as mentioned earlier, certificates for disclosure, for financial support, and for target accounting. EEGS data field structure allows to have single purpose and multi-purpose certificates, but it's very important to know at the issuance what the purpose of the certificate is, to avoid cross-purpose double counting. And from there onwards, making abstraction of the previous point, it's also possible to link an EEGS certificate with an independent criteria scheme. And also on that area, we are exploring further developments. So what's the current status? We have constructive dialogues ongoing on these elements in particular. Between AIB and ERGaR, we have joint board meetings of the 2 associations in a very constructive atmosphere. We have good dialogues between issuing bodies for multiple energy carriers. Also, The Regatrace network, led by ERGaR, to which we are gratefully invited to contribute, is gathering stakeholders in the documentation of renewable gases to also discuss these various fields together. And in the standardization of gas certificates in Sensenelec, we actively participate. Also in our own EEGS scheme group, we have good constructive discussions. The assets of EEGS in itself are the flexibility and the robustness at the same time. EEGS is flexible for adaptation to future needs. Its decision-making structure allows multiple iterations. We have at least 3 decision-making moments per year, but we can organize for more in consensus with the issuing bodies in relation with development of the markets and of legislation. EEGS also facilitates a robust framework because it has proven its value. It regulates liability and ensures security, works on fraud prevention. It's a robust framework. It can be used for multiple energy carriers. With that, I'd like to thank you for this time to speak and look forward to any questions later on.
Thank you, Katrien. Thanks for providing us the overview and update from AIB. Yeah, I think I see already some questions pop in, but as mentioned earlier, we'll leave that to the next after the next speaker's presentation. So there will be a 15 minutes Q&A session for that. Thank you, Katrien. And I also see there are some questions regarding the presentation. So as mentioned earlier, we will share the recorded video and also the presentation after the event. Okay, I'm very happy to introduce our next speaker, Stefanie. Stefanie Köningsberger. She is a project manager at ERGaR Biomethane Registry Austria. And also, in addition to that, she has a role as an executive board member at ERGaR. And today, she will share with us, does mass balancing need a dedicated certification system? Stefanie, please.
Thank you very much for this kind invitation. Also, I'll ask at the beginning if you can see the slides very well and if you can actually see the presentation mode.
Yeah,
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Thank you very much. Thank you for this confirmation. The obligatory question at the beginning. So I may also wish you a nice afternoon from my side. Thank you very much for this excellent presentation from Katrien. And I will follow up asking a question actually to the whole audience. Does mass balancing need a dedicated certification system? And I hope that with the webinar today and with the information that you gain, you will find a couple of answers to this question. I'll start by introducing the European Renewable Gas Registry, which I may represent as an executive board member. It is also an international non-profit, non-governmental organization with a location in Brussels, in Belgium. It was founded in 2016 by established biomethane registries who saw the need to create a Europe-wide system for renewable gases. Since then, the association has grown to 28 members from 15 countries. You can see also a map with the countries in dark blue. You can see those members or those member countries who have an established registry. And in the light blue color, you can see the other members who don't have a registry or don't have it yet or are currently working on it. Apart from these registries, some of them are appointed issuing bodies for renewable gas. Some are gas DSOs and TSOs. We also have biogas associations among the members and commodity traders. I think it is very nice to see that Katrien closed her presentation showing the collaborations, and I'm actually open my presentation with showing a slide that we created together in the Regatrace project. So this is an outcome of one of the reports that you can find within the Regatrace project. But today we have the topic about the certification system for tracking green gases in the EU. And to start this off, we have to have a look at the European framework for renewable gas or for renewable gas certification. So first of all, there are different types of energy carriers under this category green gas. Biogas, biomethane, but there are also the renewable fuels of non-biological origin and the recycled carbon fuels. For these renewable gas categories, there are diverse application purposes, which you can see on the bottom of the slide. So there are specific targets defined by law, for example, the union target of Article 3 or the transport target. Consumer disclosure plays an important role, the ETS sector, etc. So for these different energy carriers and different application purposes, there is a set of requirements to demonstrate the compliance, and there are different verification methods in order to do so. But what all these boxes have in common is that there is a need for a transparent, secure, and reliable certificate system. So in order to have a look into the EU tracking of renewable gases, we have to look in detail on the chains of custody, and there are different ways on how to track the chains of custody. And the first one, I'll show you a graph with direct physical deliveries via road, rail, or waterway. This means that in that case, usually there is a pure renewable gas product which is segregated from any fossil gases, so it can be easily tracked, and it can be mass balanced from the point of the raw materials to the end consumer by means of a proof of sustainability certificate. We also have a look at book and claim, which is able to document the renewable value, of course. However, it doesn't reflect the whole chain of custody. We'll have a look at this later, that the consumer part plays a different role compared to the third system that we'll have here, the mass balancing. With mass balance, the renewable and sustainable values both can be transferred from the producer to the consumer side. So both renewable and sustainable values have to be tracked. And this is actually a requirement by the Renewable Energy Directive, that sustainability verification has to be tracked by means of mass balancing. So what does it mean in more detail? What are the differences? What are the commonalities between the system of mass balance and book and claim? We put here a couple of requirements to give you some insights, and let's start off with the physical connection, which is a necessity for mass balancing. The physical product has to be transferred alongside the energy attribute certificate. The time correlation plays an important part. So the voluntary schemes which are already certified and apply the mass balancing system use a maximum of 3 months, of a 3-month period. In general, in book and claim doesn't have such strict restrictions, but the SEN standard 16325, which we've heard already, requires an 18 months expiry. Another important one is the evidence of withdrawal, to pick one. So for mass balance, it is a must to provide the evidence for gas withdrawal, but for book and claim, there is no evidence needed. So you already saw there are different requirements that are tackled in different ways, but we want to have a look in more detail and for especially in practice. So far, book and claim systems were used for voluntary applications. And in the future, it will be used for guarantees of origin, specifically for consumer disclosure, as said in Article 19 of RED II. So I copied here some quotes from the RED II. And you can see, well, if you read through that in calm after the meeting, maybe, and I assume you already read RED II several times, you see that it clearly says that the guarantee of origin does not have a function in the member state's compliance, or it doesn't have an effect on the decision of compliance with the gross final energy consumption target. But that sounds very, very theoretical. Why is that the case? So to bring this to more practice, we need to have a look at the value of the renewable gas and how it is transported. So in fact, there are, I call it 3 different values. There is the physical value, so producer and consumer are in a contract. The renewable value is transferred via the guarantee of origin. However, this type of certificate is decoupled from the physical gas flow. And on the guarantee of origin on the producer side, it is possible to include the voluntary, to include the greenhouse gas emission value on a voluntary basis. We also saw this when we saw the list of attributes that Katrien showed earlier. But the issue is that now this is only the greenhouse gas emission value, but the greenhouse gas minimum savings cannot be accounted for. And that means that there is no eligibility for target compliance. If we have a look now in mass balance, we need to make a small excursion to sustainability in order to understand this, and we want to have a look in practice. So sustainability is a term used very often, but what does it mean? In fact, there are three factors that comprise sustainability. The first one is that there are criteria on raw materials like land use and cultivation. The second one is the information on greenhouse gas minimum savings. And please do not confuse it with greenhouse gas emission value, because in fact, the greenhouse gas emission value for the consignment, like biomethane, has to be included. But this value has to be below a reference value of a fossil energy carrier. So I assume you might have heard about the fossil fuel comparator. So that's what it means, greenhouse gas minimum savings. The emission value has to undercut the fossil fuel comparator, and only then it is an actual part of the sustainability criteria. And the third factor is the mass balance, because the other two criteria, they can only be documented in a mass balancing system according to Article 30 of the Renewable Energy Directive. So now that we have a closer understanding of the sustainability in its holistic way, we can have a closer look on mass balance, which builds a link between the renewable gas installation and the application purpose by means of the proof of sustainability by means of mass balance. And mass balance means that there is a documentation along the whole chain of custody, but there's always a respective system boundary defined. Within these system boundaries, the mass balancing will be performed. So let's have a look again at the different values. Again, the physical value, there is a contact between the producer and the consumer. So the physical value is transferred. In the renewable value, this is also transferred via a certificate. And here it is very important that the certificate has to be coupled with the physical gas flow. And so that means that also this proof of sustainability has to be inseparably attached. So what does that mean? At the point or at the side of the consumer, the greenhouse gas emission savings have to be checked. And if these savings are achieved, so if the emissions are below the fossil fuel comparator, then there is eligibility for target compliance possible. And this means that the sustainable value can be included and can be transferred via a mass balancing system. But still, mass balancing might seem a bit abstract, and we want to study today in more practice. So there are different concepts on how to treat mass balancing for renewable gaseous energy carriers, especially when there are different system boundaries. So the first option, which is also currently applied by several market participants, let's have a look at this one. National gas grids or market areas are considered as separate mass balancing units, are considered as separate system boundaries. So in order to connect them, there need to be, there are interconnection points, and there need to be made use of these interconnection points. So that would mean at each interconnection point, capacities for this biomethane consignment must be booked. Another option is to interpret in the way that the gas flow only into these specific system boundaries, into the gas grid, into the market area, has to be documented. But actually, ERGaR, the European Renewable Gas Registry, proposes a simpler system to the European Commission by accepting the interconnected European natural gas network as one single logistical facility. That means the whole European natural gas network would be one mass balancing unit, one system boundary. And so by balancing injection and withdrawal numbers, a mass balance along this whole unit of the grid would be possible. So as the last slide about mass balancing, I want to show you another illustration. I hope that the illustrations make it really easier to understand. On this slide, we will compare the liquid biofuels in the transport sector and gaseous biofuels, especially when they are transferred via the gas grid. So on top, you are probably aware of this chain of custody. So the mass balance starts at the point of origin of the raw materials. It must include the transport of those raw materials to the biorefinery plant. for example, the biomethane plant, or if it's liquid, then a biorefinery plant, and then the transport of this liquid energy carrier to the end consumer. This whole chain of custody has to be tracked by a proof of sustainability certificate, which applies the mass balancing principle according to one of the recognized voluntary schemes, which I also have listed here. But let's compare this to the chain of custody for gaseous energy carriers, especially when they are transferred via the grid. So in that way, the renewable energy carrier is not segregated from the fossil energy carrier. And that's why the whole mass balancing unit should be the European gas grid. And the interconnected European gas grid should work as one logistical facility. So in this way, the chain of custody could be cut or separated into two parts. The first part works exactly like the liquid biofuels. And for the second part, the gas grid will be used as a mass balancing unit. And in this way, for both the liquid as well as the gaseous ones, there is accountability and target compliance possible. So I hope that this has given you some insights into understanding the systems itself. And I would like to use a few left minutes that I have in my time slot to show you also ERGaR's approach. So I started my presentation when I mentioned that ERGaR was founded in 2016 as a joint initiative by established registries. You might remember 2016, not so long ago. At this time, there was no RED II published yet. There was no SEN standard in development for renewable gases, but several stakeholders already saw that the need renewable gases have to play a role for the energy transition, to tackle climate change, etc. So these established registries have formed a working group in order to understand each other's systems. And then they built on this understanding, on this knowledge, and they started to harmonize the list of attributes of each national scheme, and they started to standardize the business processes. Once this ground layer has been built, there's also the need for an IT solution in order to make a modern way for exchanging data. And the IT solution has also been developed. It is available since last year. It is called Extravert Platform. And the cherry on top of this pyramid is now the documentation system. So ERGaR provides two schemes. I will show you on the next slide a little bit more about these schemes. On the one hand, there is the ERGaR COO scheme, Certificate of Origin scheme, which is based on a book and claim approach. And on the other hand, there is an ERGaR RED MB scheme, which is based on a mass balancing approach. The COO scheme can be used twofold. If the competent authorities applying it are issuing bodies which have a governmental mandate, they are allowed to issue guarantees of origin, which can be used for consumer disclosure. But I think with the more than 150 participants we have today, many of them know that there are also, well, many things are happening on market initiative and on initiatives by society. So also for those, it is necessary to provide a system to exchange information and to allow a title transfer of renewable gas consignments. So in that way, national registries who join the ERGaR COO scheme can exchange certificates of origin cross-border. Compared to that, ERGaR provides a mass balancing scheme for target compliance, but it is specifically designed for the transportation sector. It applies the principles of sustainability and mass balancing according to the Renewable Energy Directive, which I've explained to you a bit earlier. And as you've seen on the slide before, the chain of custody is separated into two parts. So the first part has to be covered by a voluntary scheme, which is recognized by the European Commission, which applies mass balancing and documents the sustainability criteria. Those who are recognized voluntary schemes and who can document the energy carrier biomethane are ISCC, REDcert, and NTA 8080. But then when it comes to the second part of this chain of custody, which is the gas grid, more or less, here there needs to be another system, and ERGaR bases this on the national registries. And this is why ERGaR has applied this system and has submitted it to the European Commission to also be recognized as a voluntary scheme by the European Commission. So this scheme is actually currently undergoing the recognition process. And I would like to finalize the presentation by bringing to the attention again the 4 core principles for mass balancing that ERGaR applies. Of course, the sustainability. So each biomethane or renewable gas consignment needs to have a proof of sustainability by one of the recognized voluntary schemes. These sustainable values have to be tracked by applying a mass balance concept. That means the whole chain of custody from a point of origin of the raw material to the biorefinery to the end consumer have to be tracked. And this is only possible if the European natural gas network is accepted as one logistical facility as the system boundaries for this mass balancing process. And last but not least is the export destination as a core principle. So this means ERGaR does not provide a national solution. There are national schemes, national governmental systems that work on the national level. But when it comes to cross-border title transfers, ERGaR proposes this system for mass balancing, which is called ERGaR REDMB voluntary scheme, because it applies the mass balancing principle as defined in the Renewable Energy Directive, and it is seeking recognition as voluntary scheme by the European Commission. And with this, I would like to close my presentation, and I'll thank you very much for your attention. And thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Stephanie. So now I think that we can move on to the Q&A questions. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Protpan Butpaset-Pichini, and I'm a analyst at Greenfact and taking care of the gas sector. So now I'm going to be the ones to ask all these questions. So we start with the first question. When is the green gas hub up and running? Stephanie and Katrien, can you please unmute yourself? And yeah.
Well, I would propose to leave the floor first to Katrien, since they have a longer running system going, if you want, but you're still muted.
Yeah, thank you. The AIB hub is not a separate hub. It's the same hub for gas and electricity. It depends on the urgency at national issuing bodies, of course. So it's a matter. AIB is just a co-creative system. It's led by 31 members voting together, but it's basically the extension of the gas-specific elements in the AIB hub. They depend on the urgency at the issuing bodies to exchange GEOs internationally over that AIB hub. And there are multiple countries joining. They are planning to join the ERGaR scheme formally by sending in a domain protocol and going through the whole application process, documentation, etc. But the urgency that these issuing bodies experience determines the speed of the developments at IT level. Market signals are, of course, of an influence at the issuing bodies. And we see that several issuing bodies do experience more and more urgency to develop that. Apart from that, likely it awaits also the finalization of the SEN standard, for which my personal guess is that the hub updates will take place in 2022 to be in line with the requirements from the SEN standard on that field. Okay. On the other hand, it's also possible, it's not necessary to wait for the hub update to exchange ERGaR GEOs internationally, because issuing bodies can do that also bilaterally before the hub has made any amendments.
Okay, thank you, Katrien. And what about ERGaR, Stephanie, when it's up and running?
Thank you very much for the question. So it's maybe a bit of a similar answer to Katrien, because there are different levels. One is the infrastructure on European level. that means the IT, but also the scheme documents, the scheme rules. So on that matter, ERGaR has finalized its development. I mentioned already that the ERGaR platform is available since last year. And now we come to the national level. So of course, the exchanges will happen between different national bodies. And here there are several national registries who are working on getting the scheme admission by ERGaR. So it really depends also on their urgency and how fast they will develop. As I mentioned, the ERGaR COO scheme is also quite flexible, so it can be used by issuing bodies for exchanging guarantees of origin, but it was actually originally developed for market initiatives. Compared to that, the RED&B scheme, I want to mention again that it is under review by the European Commission, and so it will only go live once this recognition by the Commission is available.
Yeah. But do you have expect timeline for this?
Yes, so there are the registries who've been very active and who've actually founded ERGaR in 2016 are working quite hard to get their systems running for European exchanges. And these are specifically the GGCS registry of the UK, HGCS registry from Austria, which I'm also representing, the DENA biogas registry in Germany, and GRDF from France. And we know, especially also in our collaboration in the Regulatories project, we try to help many countries to set up their national system, but that doesn't mean that they have to connect necessarily to ERGaR. It's just to tell you that we are also working together a lot to help the market develop in these countries where there is no framework yet and no infrastructure yet. So of course it will depend on the national frameworks, how fast they can develop.
Yes, so we have many questions coming because I'm with you now, Stephanie. So I asked a bit more about the question to ERGaR. Is there any limitations from different countries to accept the mass balance via the ERGaR scheme?
Yeah, well, this is actually a question you have to ask to each government. So it's quite difficult to answer that just as one person. But this is, well, generally on a national level, the mass balance can be done, well, by the national authorities, by the national organizations. If countries allow these exchanges with each other, it depends on the countries, and sometimes they require currently additional information. I explained the concept that capacities would have to be booked at each interconnection point, so that's accepted in some countries. However, to really have a Europe-wide recognition for mass balancing, this is why ERGaR has submitted this voluntary scheme to the Commission, because if this voluntary scheme, like ISCC, like REDcert, which are already available for liquid biofuels, when the system boundary is the container where they transport the liquid biofuel, it's also necessary to provide a mass balancing system along the gas grid. And so we are convinced that it is really not a solution for ERGaR, but it is a solution for the member states to all use a similar system, which is understandable, which is trustworthy, and which is reliable.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie. Now, I think that this question is to Katrien. Does GO conversion issuance, for example, from electricity GO to hydrogen GO, need to be initiated exclusively by the producers of the green hydrogens, or could this also be done by consumer of the green hydrogen?
This would be the producer. The way it is adopted in EECS and also in the draft 10 standard is that you don't just convert a GO into another GO. You need the physical energy carrier to be converted into another physical energy carrier. So, and the fact that it's a book and claim system, there on the physical energy carrier, there doesn't stick a document. It's just a choice by the producer who fuels his device with one energy carrier, documents that consumption of that fuel with a GO, and applies to an issuing body for issuing another GO. And the energy source of that new GO will be the one of the original geo. And then, of course, there's a lot of practicalities related to the different quantities of input and output, calculation of auxiliaries, and the amount of data that has to be transmitted from the original geo to the new geo, while the new geo will also record data just from the latest production device as the main data. But the energy source is documented along the chain. So yes, in short, the producer is the one who asks for a conversion issue.
Okay, so this, I'm afraid this question is also to you. This is about hydrogen. Why should a differentiations be set between hydrocarbon network and hydrogen?
Yeah, that touches upon the big discussion topics underlying the big CEN discussions, and the discussions in CEN on that field. They only just illustrate the phase of market design that we are currently still in. So it's when you're drafting rules on the practicalities, you come up to these big design questions. But it also comes down to the fact that some energy carriers can be transported only in one way, like electricity, quite easy. We have a European electricity grid, usually interconnected, but gas is transported in gases are transported in various ways, and the phrasing of the Renewable Energy Directive allows also issuing of guarantees of origin for gases that are not transported over the gas grid, over the regulated distribution and transmission system for gases. So that is why there is, of course, a difference also in the product that's finally being delivered to an end consumer, and an end consumer of clean hydrogen of 99.9% purity gets a different product than an end consumer who consumes something from the gas grid. And these things can be converted into each other, these different products. Conversion losses are to be accounted, etc. So how to do this in detail? There's a lot of discussion ongoing in CEN. We can, of course, copy that discussion here, but that's the main underlying dynamic.
Right. I'm afraid that time is running out. I will have to pick the last question. This question to you, Stefanie. What is the future role of ERGaR versus the planned European Union database for renewable and decarbonized gas?
A very interesting and very tricky question to finalize. Well, of course, it has high relevance. That the European Commission, you can see that the European Commission is also working hard on finding a system for tracking all renewable gases and making it possible to, when the title transfer happens, to allow target compliance in the country of consumption. So that's very important. But we also have to say that we don't know a lot about the Union database. Well, not just me as ERGaR, but we as European citizens. So it is under development. I would say to give you a limited answer, the certificates that are exchanged using the ERGaR mass balancing scheme could be used to provide data and to be data deliverer for the Union database. But it is really, at this point, it is really impossible to give any detailed information if there will be any interfaces or any interlinkages. I would just say that I think Katrien will agree that we are welcoming the EU Commission's activity on the field.
Okay, so thank you very much, both Katrien and Stefanie. So now is my colleagues would end this seminar.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank
you. Hold on, where's my camera? Okay, they saved the best for last. Okay, just quickly, I want to thank our speakers, Katrien and Stefanie, because we are covering quite complex topics. Book and claim systems are so complex, we needed two experts in to come explain them. And also with the mass balancing and the sustainability characteristics is always something I've personally found quite tricky to navigate. Would also like to thank the participants, and especially those who asked some very thought-provoking questions. It's much appreciated. And we were aware that there were some people who were locked out of attending the seminar because of technical difficulties. I just want to apologize for that. And those who are viewing this for the first time on replay, hello. So And the last thing I just want to reiterate what Wei was saying, that we will follow up with an email later, which will have links to the slides, which a few of you have asked about on the chat. We will also have a link to the video presentation here, and we'll also have some information on some further webinars we intend to hold about green gas. Those will probably be in the later half of the year, around autumn, when a lot of countries are more into the RED II implementation, so they know where they're going as far as these green gas certificates are concerned. And then later on, towards the end of the year, we'll probably talk about some of the data that we have and some of the analysis we can provide as far as pricing of these certificates. We will also have a link which will allow you to get in contact with us, not only if you just want to be a client and get some information, but also because this is a new field, we're always looking for opportunities to collaborate and really bring some value to people who are entering this market. That's all I had for now. Once again, thanks for joining us, and have a nice week.